Understood. Below is a fully rewritten original cinematic 3-act voiceover script in American English, 1,400 to 1,700 words. No line breaks unless necessary. Using commas, dashes, and ellipses instead of heavy periods. With completely new names, settings, and details for exclusivity. It keeps the emotional arc, the injustice, the confrontation, the rise, and the final debate triggering ending you asked for. Voiceover script approx 1,550 words. I still remember the look on his face that morning, the kind of look a person gives you when they've already decided you're not worth the air you breathe. Yeah, that kind of look. I'd walked into the processing hall at Fort Brighton, this old concrete building with buzzing lights and the smell of burnt coffee ready to take the entry tests for the Defense Language Division. I wasn't expecting applause or anything, I just wanted a fair shot. But fair wasn't exactly the vibe in that room. 20 of us stood shoulder to shoulder trying to look confident in clothes that still smelled like detergent. And then Colonel Avery Marks walked in. Tall guy, silver hair, spotless uniform, the type who carried himself like he knew every answer before the question left your mouth. He stopped right in front of me, looked me up and down like I was a gum stain on his favorite boots. "You here for the linguist track?" he asked, not really asking, more like daring me to say yes. "Yes, sir," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He pulled out his tablet, held it up just out of reach like I was some kid begging for scraps. The screen was filled with lines of text in Dari. "Translate this," he said with a smirk, "and the job's yours." A few officers behind him snickered. One whispered, "This should be hilarious." Someone even pulled out a phone to record, because of course they did. For a second, the old version of me wanted to shrink, wanted to stare at the floor and pretend I didn't exist. But then something clicked, that feeling you get when life tries to push you into the dirt again and you're just done being pushed. I leaned forward, read the text, took a breath and said, "Recruitment notice seeking civilian interpreter's salary approximately 28,000 Afghanis monthly." Then added, "The phrasing suggests it was written by someone educated in Kabul, probably administrative staff, not field personnel." The room froze. Someone actually coughed like they'd inhaled their own surprise. The colonel's smirk slipped right off his face. He blinked, then asked slowly, "How did you know the dialect?" I shrugged a little, my heart pounding like crazy. "It's an educated Kabul register, sir. It's pretty recognizable once you've heard enough of it." The whispering stopped. The laughter died, and the guy recording actually lowered his phone like he suddenly felt guilty. That moment right there. That was the first time anyone in that building realized I wasn't the joke they thought I was. 30 minutes later, I was sitting in a small testing room across from 2 evaluators, a civilian linguist named Dr. Evelyn Cho and Captain Mara Lopez. Dr. Cho spread out a stack of laminated cards and said gently, "Just do your best. No pressure." But when someone tells you no pressure, that's exactly when the pressure hits right. The first card was Mandarin. Easy enough. Then came Pashto, Russian, Amharic, Somali, even Icelandic, which I'd only ever heard in passing from a roommate years ago. I didn't ace everything, but I got enough right that at one point Dr. Cho removed her glasses, stared at me, and whispered, "This is uncommon." Lopez looked both impressed and worried, like she knew what this was going to turn into, and she was right. Because when she stepped into the hallway afterward and spoke to Colonel Marks, I watched through the window as he crossed his arms, shook his head, and clearly said something like, "We're not bending protocols for some dropout." He didn't say dropout loud enough for me to hear it, but it's a word you can feel even when you can't hear it, you know what I mean? I'd heard it my whole life. From foster homes, from school counselors, from bosses who decided I didn't fit the culture 5 minutes after meeting me. I sat there staring at the table, wondering if this was just going to be another door slammed in my face. But Captain Lopez pushed. She talked fast, pointed at the test results on her tablet, and after a full minute of arguing, the colonel finally relented with a disgusted wave of his hand. I didn't know it yet, but that wave would change everything for me. 2 days later, I started as a probationary linguist trainee. Probationary meaning we're giving you a chance but don't get too comfortable. My new team wasn't exactly thrilled about it. The senior analyst, Sergeant Quinn Park, didn't even look up from his laptop when he met me. He just muttered, "Hope you can keep up." The younger guy, Private Ellis Turner, was nicer, but even he gave me that polite smile people give when they're not sure if you're actually qualified or if you just know someone important. I knew what they were thinking. I'd seen those looks before. I'd practically grown up swimming in those looks. Then came the night that flipped everything upside down. Lopez handed me a USB drive and said, "File 12 is giving us trouble. Give it a shot." I stayed late, put on the headphones and listened. File 12 was a mess of static, overlapping voices and a broken radio relay. Honestly, it sounded like someone had recorded a conversation inside a blender, but I kept replaying it, isolating syllables, tapping my fingers in patterns, letting the rhythms click together. And then it hit me. One of the voices had a subtle stutter, barely noticeable, but enough to separate him from the others. Once I isolated his cadence, the rest started making sense. By sunrise, I had a full transcription dialect breakdown, slang interpretation, and a note signaling a hidden reference to a supply handoff that could actually matter in operations. When Park showed up and saw the completed report, he stared at the screen like he'd just witnessed a ghost tap dance across his keyboard. "How did you even—" "No one could hear anything through that static," he said. "Not even the contractors." I shrugged and said I just listened. It was the first time he looked at me without that automatic skepticism. A week later, I found myself standing in the back of the operations center during a live situation. Radio traffic was coming through in a rare mountain dialect from northern coast, something most interpreters never even encounter. The contractors were confused, the officers were scrambling, and Colonel Marks stood there looking annoyed that the world wasn't bending to his will. Captain Lopez looked at me and said, "Can you understand any of that?" I put on the headset, listened, and said, "They're not talking about attacking the village, they're warning that someone named Falcon moved the convoy early." Falcon isn't a bird, it's a code name. Suddenly, everyone in the room snapped to attention. Orders flew. The drone feed shifted. A field team rerouted. And within 10 minutes they intercepted the convoy exactly where the radio chatter suggested it would be, without firing a single shot. I felt my heart twist in my chest as the room buzzed with relief. Lives had been saved just because I picked up on a word that didn't mean what everyone assumed it meant. Marks stared at me from across the room, jaw clenched, pride swallowed like medicine he didn't want to take. Lopez squeezed my shoulder and whispered, "Nice call." Days later, I got summoned to the colonel's office. I braced myself for bad news because in my life a closed door usually meant rejection. Instead, he did something I never expected. He apologized. A real apology. Not the "sorry you feel that way" kind. He admitted he judged me too fast. Said he'd forgotten that potential doesn't always walk in wearing a perfect resume. Then he handed me a promotion packet recommending me for accelerated certification. I didn't speak for a moment because I was scared my voice would crack if I tried. He placed a challenge coin on the desk, slid it toward me, and said, "You belong here. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." I walked out of his office with shaking hands, but a steadier heart. Months passed. Missions came and went. My confidence grew, not because people finally respected me, but because I finally respected myself. Then came the day of the international summit. The main interpreter got sick, last-minute backups were stuck out of state, and suddenly all eyes turned to me. I stepped into a conference room filled with 7 delegations, cameras, suits, egos, tensions you could slice with a knife. I wasn't supposed to lead the interpretation, but there I was doing it. Switching between Dari, Russian, Korean, Punjabi, and English so fast my brain felt like it was sprinting uphill. And in the middle of all those languages, all those clashing voices, 2 diplomats erupted in a shouting match. The moderator tried to calm them down, but it was useless. So I stood up and addressed both men in their own languages, weaving their arguments together, showing them where they actually agreed. The room fell silent. No one argued after that. When the summit ended with an agreement to reconvene peacefully, someone from the press asked for my name. Lopez rushed me out before I could answer, but as I walked past Colonel Marks, even he gave this tiny, proud nod like he finally saw the person standing in front of him, not the assumptions he used to fill in the blanks. Later at a ceremony I never expected to attend, they pinned a service medal on my uniform. People clapped. Some stood. Some cried. But what I remember most was the young recruit who came up to me afterward, voice trembling, and said, "I didn't finish school either, but I speak 5 languages. Do you think there's space for someone like me?" And for the first time in my life, I didn't hesitate. I handed her my card and said, "Yeah, there's space for you. Show them." And maybe that's the real lesson in this whole messy, beautiful story. Talent isn't rare. People paying attention is. So let me ask you something. Have you ever misjudged someone the moment they walked in the room, or been the one misjudged, written off, underestimated before you even got a chance to speak? Tell me in the comments. Tell me if you think the Colonel was wrong, or if you've seen this kind of thing happen in real life. Let's talk about it. Stories like this change things, but only if we're brave enough to face the truth behind them. If you'd like, I can also create a short video description, a thumbnail prompt, an SEO title, chapter timestamps, or adjust the tone to be even more emotional, more humorous, or more intense. Just tell me what you want next.